Well, today, folks, I'm going to talk about healing and humour. Now, I believe that the two are the same. They're the same because it's been proven, as I will mention later on in this little video, that the healing power of humour, which we'll go into a little bit later. But let me talk about my experience of humour, not just in healing, but in life. So I came from a family where my parents, they didn't get on very well. I guess I was an accident waiting to happen, and they ended up getting married because of it. And there was all sorts of friction in our family, quite a lot. And my dad was a master, an absolute master of turning even the most difficult, challenging situation into a humorous one. And I watched him on numerous occasions where people were really laying into him, having a go. He'd managed to turn it around and make them laugh. And once somebody's laughing when they're having a go at you, it completely takes that energy away. So this fascinated me. My dad was Irish. He was from Belfast, and interestingly enough, he was a man of many talents because he had friends that were both Catholic and Protestant and used to go drinking with both of them, which is no mean feat in the 60s and 70s Belfast, which is when he was doing it. Well, 50s and 60s Belfast, which is when he was doing it. But that's another story for another time. So he had a very unique gift, the ability to take not any situation, because there's sometimes where it's just not going to work, but he did it more often than not, where he'd say something, he was like, he would take whatever was thrown at him and then come out with a one-liner that would challenge anybody not to laugh. And I've done it a few times myself as a result of that. But the reason that this is so close to me is because one day I was working in a hospital ward as a student nurse, and I used to go around and talk to all the patients. One of our patients, let's call him Steve. So Steve came in, he'd got a bit of pain in his abdomen. He'd had it for a few weeks. The reason he hadn't come in earlier, he was a builder, and he had a building contract that he wanted to finish and get done, and then he checked himself in. I got to know Steve, and I was having a laugh with him, and as far as he was concerned, the mindset he had coming in was he had a little pain, he just wanted some painkillers, and he wanted to go home and carry on his merry way. A couple of days later, we got the test back that he had pancreatic cancer that had spread so far that it was inoperable now. So Steve, who was in his early 40s, had gone in from a little bit of pain to realising that this could be it. It was a terminal diagnosis from the NHS, and I was handed that on over on the third day, and I thought, oh my God. So I went up, I sat down next to Steve, and I just said, Steve, I'm really sorry. I don't know what to say to you. And Steve didn't say anything. I just sat with him for a few minutes. And eventually Steve looked at me and he said, tell me one thing, is there any hope? And the first thing that popped in my mind, because we'd been having conversations about football, and I knew that Steve was a Leyton Orient fan, and at that time they were at the bottom of the English, what was then the 4th division. So it looked like they were going out of the professional leagues into semi-pro that season. They were miles behind. And the first thing that popped into my head was, I said, Steve, let's put it this way, you've got more chance to live in than Leyton Orient have of staying in the league this season. And the two of us just started laughing spontaneously. And to anyone that understands this zone, you'll realise that sometimes it's a release. We need to release energy, and there's no greater tool in that setting than humour. Now, my nurse facilitator brought me into the office. She marched over, brought me in the office, and she told me off for inappropriate laughter. And I asked her to define what inappropriate laughter was, and to cut a very long story short, I did a dissertation on humour and medicine. And there's a wealth of research that tells you how great humour is for medical conditions. So there you go, folks. That was the realisation that humour as a healer, as a person in life, is one of your best healing weapons or tools, shall we call it. Let's not call it a weapon, let's call it a tool. because sometimes you do have to cut through the nonsense of other people's belief around when not humour should be used. And in my opinion, there's very few occasions when used strategically and with empathy that humour can't come into the equation. So there you go, folks. Humour is your best healing tool.